My study is about increased instructional support for students using off-task behavior as an academic avoidance. Okay, so here's an introduction. Students with EBD are a growing population. There's been a 21% increase since 1975, and there's not a lot of academic research with the population in their instruction. These students have a high dropout rate and are more likely to fail in areas of life because their behaviors prelude their academics. So when students exhibit avoidance and escape functions of behavior, they're usually given a choice of activities or easier materials. There's not a lot of research done on increased instructional support for students who are avoiding instruction. Okay, my research review topics. Psychologically, students with EBD do not have the proper development regarding emotions and behaviors. According to Piaget's cognitive stages of development, children develop in specific stages and cannot progress until one stage has been met. For students with EBD, emotional stages often lag behind or are slower to develop than their peers without disabilities. Okay, here's some interventions commonly used for academic avoidance. The main research interventions include change of academics to something less aversive or activity choice. Little research is done on basic increase. Sorry. Okay, let's do this again. Little research is done on basic, increased, and positive instructional support and its effects on students who avoid tasks or use disruptive behaviors to gain attention. Skinner's theory of operant conditioning states that changing the consequence when a desired behavior is performed, you can increase the rate of behavior or rate of desired behavior. Crap, Kayla. We're not prepared for this. Okay. So here are some reading and writing interventions for students with EBD. There's not a lot of research done with these interventions for a specific population. There is research done with positive results with reading and writing programs for students who are aversive to those instruction areas. These programs provide immediate feedback. They present information in small amounts so the responses can be shaped. And according to Skinner, the reinforcements will generalize across similar stimuli, producing a secondary conditioning. Oh my God. And so my research questions for this study are, what is the social validity or acceptability for using increased instructional support for a student with emotional and behavioral disorders? And what is the effectiveness of using increased instructional support for students who use off-task behavior as an avoidance function of behavior during instruction? Okay, my design study is multiple baseline across participants. I used 3 90-minute sessions with 2 participants in each one based upon the school's class change schedule. So we had Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. The overall participant summary. There are 6 high school participants. There's 4 boys and 2 girls. Oh God, no. No, we have 5 boys and 1 girl. Oops. All students have been diagnosed with EBD. Oops. They have a low average to high average IQ, and all students have a hypothesized avoidance and escape function of behavior. The first participant in Phase 1 is Brad. He's 16 years old, 10th grader. He's got average IQ. His primary disability is EBD, and his secondary is OHI, and he falls under the category of ADHD. The second participant in Phase 1 is Isaiah. He's 15 years old in 10th grade. He has an average IQ. He also has a primary disability of EBD and a secondary disability with other health impairments with ADHD. In Phase 2, Taylor is a 19-year-old girl. She's a senior, 12th grade. She has a low average IQ. Her primary disability is EBD, and her secondary is orthopedic impairment. The other participant in Phase 2 is Travis. He's 17 years old, 12th grade, low average IQ. EBD is his primary disability, and his secondary is other health impairments. In Phase 3, we have Chris, who's 17 years old. He's an 11th grader, but he's in a 9th grade English class. He has an average IQ, but he does have a processing disorder, and his primary disability is EBD. And then the last participant is Tommy, who is 15 years old in 9th grade, low average IQ, and primary disability. Oh my god, my boobs are out. Okay. Alright, the dependent variables are the time spent on task, and the independent variables are the increased instructional support. For data collection, I used time sampling. I used 40 30-second intervals, which was 20 minutes total. Baseline was 8 days total for all participants, and the IOA data was taken by an assistant in the classroom who used the same data sheet as I did. So the procedures: first, I collected baseline for the first 8 days. Then I began phase 1 with the first block. For increased instructional support, we use proximity control. We ask questions such as, what can I do to help you? Do you understand? We did small group instruction if needed. And while each, how do I word this? Okay. I hope she doesn't look at this part. Okay, so I'll say, okay, while each phase was going on, the next phases were still in baseline. So, began phase 1, oops, sorry, Kayla. Then, after that, I began phase 2 the following week with second block with the same intervention. At this time, the third block was still in baseline. And then the next week, all 3 of them were in intervention, and I began phase 3. That was bad. Okay, for each phase, each day, 20 minutes of increased instructional support, followed by a 20-minute time away from the students for data collection. After the second 20 minutes for the rest of the block, the increased instructional support was collected, but no data was taken during the second time span, and students who were in phases 2 and 3 continued in baseline until the intervention began for them. So I just need to read on. This is bad. Yeah, I hope so. Okay, the results. Each section, or each student, had a positive increase of percentage of time on task by phase 3 of the intervention. Brad had a 30% increase. Isaiah had a 36% increase. Taylor had a 108% increase. No, it gets worse. Travis had 85%. Chris had 84%, and Tommy had a 231% increase. Okay, so here's Brad's graph. Brad's intervention phase began on the 9th day of the study. He shows a more stabilized pattern of time spent on task, including 2 times where he reached 100% on-task behavior during instruction. Go, Brad. Isaiah's intervention phase began on the 9th day of the study. He shows a more stabilized pattern of time spent on task beginning on the 14th day of phase 1. Okay, now in phase 2, Taylor's intervention phase began at the 12th day of the study. She shows a more stabilized pattern of time spent on task beginning on the 14th day of phase 2, although there were inconsistencies due to absences where the study could not be implemented. Okay, Travis's intervention phase began at the 12th day of the study. He shows higher percentages of time spent on task without a consistent daily pattern. Okay, Chris's intervention phase began at the 15th day of the study. He shows a consistent week of intervention with percentages showing an overall 84% increase, yet more research is needed to show effectiveness. He was in baseline, or he was in the intervention for 4 days. Here we go. Tommy's intervention phase began at the 15th day of the study. He shows a much higher average percentage of on-time task in phase 3, yet more research is needed to determine the effectiveness of the intervention. Okay, the limitations to this study are that the small population that was studied, there are only 6 students and thousands of kids with EBD. Each class had different activities on different days depending on which English language arts class they were enrolled in, which affected the engagement levels. An immediate large increase in engagement during phase 3 is not as accurate because of the over 200% increase. So a lot more research needs to be done on that for a longer amount of time. Future research is needed to further investigate the effectiveness of increased instructional support for high school students with emotional and behavioral disorders. Although this research shows a positive correlation through multiple baseline studies, a stronger and lengthier study must take place. Thank you so much. Oh my God, it's 10 minutes. I mean, I'll obviously stop.